Hello, you. How are you? Sorry, that's my hand. Nice to see you. And lots going on in this household. Sorry, we're a tad late today. Mouse decided that he needed our attention. Isn't it fun with COVID working from your home? All right, so what are we on? We're on day 10, the root cause of illness, of all illness and health issues. I'd like to announce my mug for the day. There you go. Perhaps you might want to see my mug. Don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? That's my mug. So, however, you know. So guys, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here in a world that seems mighty interesting these days, doesn't it? What's new with you today? What's your word for the day? I would love to hear, especially after the last couple of days of lives. What is it that is coming up for you? What's showing itself? What are you noticing from doing these first 9 days? What's your favorite day? In fact, I would really love to know what your favorite day is. What is your favorite day so far that you've listened to? Just type it in the chat and tell us why. Tell me why, because it's really just me right here trying to get my other camera started. Yeah, so what is it that's yummy? What have you noticed that's yummy? What do you like? What have you liked? What has been good? What's your favorite part? Put it in the chat. I want to hear. What's been your favorite day? What's been the one that's really touched you? Hi, Sharon McCrell. Your word is relief. Yeah. So my word for the day is reset. That's my word. Zoe, I'd love to hear your word for the day. My word for the day is reset. All right, you guys. So your favorite day was day 4 in superpowers? It's funny. It's a lot of people's favorite day. Isn't that interesting? So in the book Unstuck, what we're going to be talking about, when you buy the book, you'll actually get a link for a workshop that we're going to do at no charge on chapter 11, which is all about human superpowers. We're going to talk about some of the new ones that human beings are experiencing and that are being birthed from the polarity right now. You know, creativity, creation, even the creation of new superpowers comes from great polarity, right? So glad to hear your word. Listen, you guys. All right, so let's look. Let's look and see. Susan, the contrast topic. Okay, cool. Well, go back and listen if you haven't listened to all 10 days so far. They were and continue to be topics that we kept getting feedback from. People are still commenting on those. So make sure you give them a watch. The second thing is, I'm so excited. You're going to see us after day 12. You're not going to hear much from us because we're going to be working hard on making sure everything's in place so that you get everything you need for the book launch, and that I've connected with whom I'm going to connect with. But in the meantime, I cannot tell you how tickled I am to be able to kind of do little tiny subtopics from within the book that get expanded upon. I can't wait till you read it. So, Sonia, your word is play. Yay. So now, today, what's the root cause of almost all illness? Now, when I was a nutritionist, I can tell you what the answer was that you got from the nutrition world. This is the answer you got. The answer you got was the root cause of most illness, when you look at statistics, is I think is the second highest cause of death, is iatrogenic, which is basically mistaken, it's doctor caused. So that's not to say that I don't like doctors, and I'm not bringing that up because I don't. Trust me, I used to train doctors and nurses, and they're amazing, and I have nothing but respect. But of course, a lot of people end up in hospitals and people make mistakes. There's lots of opportunity. One might say it's doctor caused, but if it was 100 years ago, those people would be dead anyways because they wouldn't even have a doctor. You know what I mean? So not to be brash about it, but so what is the number one cause of illness? Well, I'm going to put forth to you, some people might say nutrition. Take a guess. Take a guess. What do you think is the number one cause? Poor nutrition, smoking. What do you think it is? Just write it in. The number one cause of disease. Okay, just write it in. Take a wild stab at it. And I would say that Carol, Barbie, Becky, and Barb all are correct. And Zoe. Yeah, the number one cause of disease is actually stress, which is the same, Brian, as being out of the flow, which is the same, Sonia, as resistance, right? Which is the same as inconsistent beliefs, which is the same as perspective. Now you might say, huh? Well, really, let's take apart the word. You've heard this a million times if you've heard it once, that it's dis-ease. The number one cause of, but let's break it down, because just saying that sort of sounds like a platitude. It sounds like something you've heard a million times. It gets much more interesting as we break it down, the number one cause of illness, into constituent parts such that you can really get why. That it's not just some, oh, that makes perfect sense. You get stressed out and you get sick. Well, let's talk about it for a second. So human beings are born for a certain path. Not like it's predetermined, more like it's a path of a way of being rather than a path of a thing to do. Some people, it's a minority, have something to do that might be the perfect match for the way of being. But mostly, you bring the gift that you are to everything you do. Again, it sounds like a platitude, so let me explain. No matter when I was I used to work at Molson's as an internal auditor, and I was always the harmonizer. Plus, I didn't drink. So I was always the person bringing everyone together, making people laugh, causing coherence and deep conversations that would bring greater understanding. Then when I went to work at Procter & Gamble after I did my stint at University of Waterloo, I went to P&G, and I loved my admin assistant, and we would talk all the time that I would help her to see life a different way. And then even with my managers, I was doing that until I did a big project, which was to build a bridge between the contract manufacturers who put together all the liquid chemicals to make, say, liquid Tide, and the chemical engineers at Procter & Gamble to help them talk together and to help them build bridges, because we were wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I created this workshop using principles from implementing total quality to assist them to be able to communicate and develop systems to be able to build a bridge between the two, so that we could find a third entity called How Do We Work Together? So it doesn't matter where I go. Everywhere I go, I'm literally doing the same thing. I'm being the same person. It's finding a way to congruence, a third entity that solves problems. I'm always looking for the way to harmonize when things are out of congruence. And where that way of being is being fully received, it makes my heart sing, because then I can fully express my reason for being into the world. And here I am now. What happened to me is I got incredibly, incredibly sick. I used to suffer from migraines. I had so many toxins going through my body because I was exposed to some chemical toxins during my late 20s. And so I had to harmonize my body with nature. And I had to also take a look. I only got 2/3 of the way better. I only got 2/3 of the way better because everything I was doing was very logical and rational, but all had to do with nutrition and cleansing and moving my body and getting this stuff out of me. And I actually became a perfectionist around food. I became anal retentive around what I ate. I started being very restrictive around, I don't eat wheat, I don't eat dairy, I don't eat sugar, I don't have alcohol, I don't, all of these things I couldn't do because all of them would trigger the migraines. Have you guys done any of this stuff? And what I realized is the body can actually metabolize anything. The body has the capacity to heal from anything. It doesn't mean that we would feed it something bad, but I was verging on another disease called orthorexia. And orthorexia is where you get so perfectionistic about what you eat, and when you're a nutritionist, you certainly get fed a lot of information about what's good and what's bad. I used to listen to Dr. Mercola before it was even a thing, and kind of discovered he was one of the polarizing factors in my life that was causing me to, it's nice all the information and I get it. However, at some point, I want my body to be able to transmute anything. As I started to learn about epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology, and I started to learn about more about biophysics, I started to realize that the body can do anything it wants. And I was ready to liberate my cells. And every time I was told that the body couldn't do something, I could feel the contraction. I'm like, so one of the most important guides that you have is your cells. Your cells will never lie to you. Your cells will never lie to you. And your cells will always tell you whether you're on the track of most expansion or contraction. And they will tell you by a contractive or an expansive feeling, like we talked about yesterday. The biggest issue is that we give our power to things outside of us, like nutritionists, like I used to be. So I started to teach people how to listen to their body as to whether it was expanding or contracting with what they were thinking, with what they were eating, with what they were drinking, with what they were, the kinds of things they were dancing with, and helping them be a master of their own universe, harmonizing again. So even as a nutritionist, I was helping people find that congruence. You have a way of being that's congruent with you too. That alignment without resistance is what causes the greatest amount of health in your body. The gift that you are, not the thing that you do for a living. The only way those two are related is that if you bring the gift that you are to whatever you do for a living, I don't care if you're a garbage truck person. It doesn't matter. If you're expressing fully into whatever you're doing, it becomes the thing that you should do. So where do we go from there? Where we go from there is the number one cause of disease. Let's now talk about what we've been just sharing around. Number one cause of disease is, of course, stress. But what is stress? Stress is the dissonance between what you think should be and what actually is. That's what causes stress. Whether it's in your body, whether it's in your health, whether it's in your life, whether it's with your marriage. Stress, simply defined, is the difference between, the dissonance between what you imagine can be and what actually is. And when you judge it, it becomes over-the-top stress. Stress in and of itself is a catalyst for change. Now, the problem is your body is already wired for how it knows it can be. So when life is not going as you think it could be, if it's not in the degree of fluidity that you know, somehow you don't even know how you know that it can be, there's a little bit of spiritual dissonance there. And it needs to be resolved one way or the other. One way is to get okay with the way it is, which is fine. And the other way is to actually change your circumstance to the picture in your mind. The problem is wherever you land, there'll always be something else to try to get to. So the number one cause of disease is actually the judgment of that dissonance. As a creator, you're always going to have things that you know could go more smoothly or better or more beautifully, or you could communicate with more efficiency or effectiveness, or you could have a better relationship with your mom or your dad or your sister. It can always be more delicious, more beautiful. But when you judge the difference between where it is and where you know it can be, that's what causes the kind of stress that causes a disease. The kind of stress that you have just by noticing that it could be better by itself, without the judgment, is just a catalyst for change. That's the difference between the two kinds of stress. Does that mean that there aren't some kinds of diseases that people just don't get born into and that are very difficult to change, if not kind of impossible? There are diseases in the body that are in the highest for some people in this world to have. It's like, if you ask Bruce Lipton, it's less than 3%. That serve humanity in some way. I'll give you an example, because someone once asked me about their niece who had just passed away. She came into a Get Out of Your Way course. And this was in Ontario. And this adorable little thing had muscular dystrophy. And this little kid, I think she passed away at 6 or 7. And the aunt said to me, "It's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair." But then she proceeded to tell me about how her family, completely separately, so her cousins, her sisters, everyone doesn't talk to each other. Very opinionated family. But as soon as this little one would enter the room at 3 or 4 or 5, everyone sank into their heart. Everyone immediately came into their heart, and somehow all of the differences would disappear. And she would catalyze their connection. And it's almost like she knew she was doing it. She almost knew that she was born for that. And then what happened was she passed away a week before this woman did Get Out of Your Own Way. She came to Get Out of Your Way, and she told the story, and we all bawled. And the story she told was that this little one passed away, and then there was the funeral, and everyone had to get together. This family doesn't get along. And on the Saturday where they all got together, astoundingly, 2 of the people stood up in front of the room, different people from different sides of the family that were usually at war, and said, it even chokes me up to think about this. This is 20 years ago. No, 15 years ago. She said, they both said, "Listen, this little soul couldn't have died in vain. You know what she wanted for all of us. She did it every time she walked into the room. I say whatever is bothering us here forward, that we take a lesson from this very wise 7-year-old, and we learn to get along like she could get along with all of us. None of the stuff that we fight over is worth anything." And 2 people made the same speech. And ever since then, their family has gotten along, has found a way through, has, returned back to love. So someone might say, why do little kids get sick? They don't have dis-ease. And sometimes things are happening. Remember, one of the things that I hear all the time, and some of you are your eyes gonna twitch when I say this, but oh well, it's just the truth. We're infinite. I know it's hard to get from here, and I know over 1 million people in the United States have died of COVID. Give or take, I know some of you don't believe that. It doesn't even matter. It's a lot of people. The point is this, that we're infinite. We'll dance with each other again if we're that important in each other's lives. There's much to learn. We're curious little souls. We don't go away. We don't get gone. And one of the most beautiful things I ever heard was the story that happened after this little girl died, and this aunt of hers went home. And in the week before, at this point, Get Out of Your Way was 5 Saturdays in a row. So in the 3rd Saturday, she said, "You'll never believe this, Jennifer, or maybe you will." Of course I will. She said, "Last week you talked to someone else about how, this woman, her husband had died, and this bird kept hitting the window of her office when she was working." And I said, "Well, oftentimes birds represent the spirit of someone. What did you connect it with?" And then she went into this whole story of how the bird was right around where a picture was, or some representation of her husband in the room. She said, "Oh my God, is that my husband? What is going on here?" And I said, "Oh my God, so obviously, what do you think there was that he was trying to say?" And she told me, and everyone bawled. And then the next week, this woman, this auntie, came in to Get Out of Your Way. She goes, "I can't believe you talked about birds last week, because this has never happened before. But this week on Wednesday, a bird flew into my house." And the bird flew into my house. A bird flew into the house. And that bird flew around. I think it was a dove or a sparrow or something like that. It was so beautiful. And it wouldn't leave. And all the doors and the windows were closed, and she didn't understand how the thing got in there because someone would have seen it. And she just smiled because she knew after what I had said the week before. And so she took a picture and she showed it to everybody, and then they figured out how to get the bird out of the house. But she was so grateful. It's kind of like an "I'm okay." I'm okay. So we're infinite. We don't go anywhere. We just change form. It's a birth into that world, and it's a birth into this world. It's a birth into the world without a body. It's a birth into the world with a body. Blah, blah, blah. I know I sound kind of blasé about it, but I talk to dead people a lot. So they're not gone. And you can too. It's one of the superpowers we'll talk about on the chapter 11 thing that we're going to do, right? When you get the book. So the next piece of this is, so sometimes disease is like that, but mostly disease is really simply that you're not listening to the symptoms that your cells are telling you. You think that neck tension is normal. You think that having ridiculous periods is just how your family does it. You think that getting migraines is just how you are. But actually, that's not true. That is a communication from your body. You might have taken for granted the communication. You might not have been told what I'm saying right now, which most of you have at some point heard what I'm saying. Some of you just accept that, my parents were this way, or my mom was this way, or my dad was this way. When in actuality, genetics don't play out in your body without a biochemical soup available, and the biochemical soup is generated by your perspective on life. Change your perspective, biochemical soup changes, and the gene that expresses changes. Genes are just a roadmap. You're driving. If you change how you drive, guess what? The genes that express also change. Law of Epigenetics 101. Get what I'm saying? So the root cause of all illness is stress, but that's more like divergence. Oh, here's one more thing. One of the major ways that stresses us, and I think this is the most important thing to say in this day 10 of our 12 days. When we dawn shoulds, musts, and have to related identities, ways of being, roles that we take on with personalities to the roles. It's not just that I'm the big sister to my two sisters. Maybe I'm the wise big sister, or I'm the one who answers all their questions, or I'm the one who brings harmony to everyone, but I carry it like a responsibility, like a cross. You can even be the funny one, or the cosmic one, or the crazy one, or the different one. And then we wear those things. And when we wear them, or the responsible one, you know? And when we wear those identities, when we wear those roles, when we become those things, when the truth of who we are underlies all of that, and Adam and I talk about this all the time, when we start getting serious, we're both innately incredibly silly people. We're incredibly silly people, and everything gets hard when we get serious. Truly. It's not to say that we don't have infrastructure, or we don't keep to schedules, or we don't do what we say we're going to do, or we don't apologize when we don't say what we're going to do, you know. It's not that we don't do that. It's just that innately we're kind of playful to begin with. And when we don't be who we came here to be, when we aren't who we are innately, when we don these shoulds, musts, and have to roles, for whatever reason, our mother was that way, the situation demanded that you pulled up your socks because someone went MIA, whatever it is, those roles, those ways of being, those personality traits that you didn't choose, cause spiritual dissonance. So it's really interesting. One of my dear friends in the CMT expressed something, which I'm not going to say who that is, but I teach a program for the Evolutionary Business Council called the Certified Master Trainer Program. There's 3 of us that teach it. Iman Agay is one of them. I'm a second one, and then Susie Carter is the third one. And we were talking today in my portion of the Master Trainer class about, you know, the roles and identities that we don. And as a result of the roles and identities that this one woman had donned, of course, it basically was part of a really messy relationship. And with next to nothing in hand, she realized that she couldn't live anymore with those identities. And part of how she became a leader is she left and had to retrain everybody, including her family, as to who she really was. And the body can feel the dissonance. It tells you, I've had this happen many times in my life where it's like, this has to stop. I'm not being myself. I can literally feel myself getting sick. I know I'm going to get sick. You ever had that? And it's the dissonance between who you really are and who you're pretending to be. So you remember at the beginning I said, you know, the gift that I am, as you're looking at the gift that you are, and your best friend can tell you the gift that you are. Trust me when I say. Even people at your work can tell you the gift that you are. If you're looking for the reason why you're alive, you're already doing it. The gift that you are is not the job that you do. The gift that you are is the natural way you be. So what do I do? Day in and day out, you know, we can get a little bit more complex than this, but what I do day in and day out is help people build bridges back to themselves without the roles and identities, unapologetically becoming themselves, such that they can flourish forward without all the resistance. You don't have to be anything for anyone else. Oh, how cool is that? My cousin Kathy Watts just joined us, who, by the way, I love because she unapologetically bees herself. It's one of my favorite things about her, as a matter of fact. So far so good. Feel good. Capiche? Makes sense? You know, we only have a little bit of time to talk every time we're together here. But that's today. So, love you guys. Again, I say to you, we have the release party, but even if you want to find out about that free workshop that I'm doing, when you go and sign up at thewideawakening.com/unstuck, you will actually get information about that workshop, and absolutely you could bring a friend, you could, you know, get them signed up, all that kind of stuff. But we're gonna go deep on these superpowers, on becoming the gift that you are, and using the superpowers to kind of expand on the gift that you are. So I hope that makes sense to you. People in Agent of Awakening, hang out, and people on Facebook, I love you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow, which is day 11. I mean, day 11. Come on, it's 11. 1 + 1 = 11. Okay, big hugs.